I'm a little blown out tonight. Hold on. Turn it down. Yeah. Hi, Liam.
Hey, Adrian.
I saw Dave Sargent. Oh, there you are, Dave. I got you.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Dan.
Howdy.
Everybody have a nice holiday? Yeah. Good.
Did you have a nice holiday?
I did. It was quiet. Actually, my son tested positive for COVID. Like,
Oh, no. Oh,
what day was Christmas? It was Friday on Wednesday.
mm.
So we canceled all of our plans and stayed in. He was sick for about 36 hours. He had a very, very high fever. And then the next 36 hours or so, he was improving and rehydrating. And that was it. And now we've been climbing the walls for the last week.
Oh,
My daughter and I did not get sick, so that was good.
yeah, that is good. That must have been
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah.
Jeez. How old is your son?
He's 10.
Okay.
And my daughter is 7. So she and I did okay. And they had both had their second vaccine on that Monday.
Wow.
So I initially thought he was having like a immune response,
Mhm.
but then the fever did not come down, and it was very high fever. So it could have been worse. I mean, it's during Christmas break, right? I would have been sitting here working remotely anyways, so it's fine.
Are you
Hey, Heidi.
sick? Are you sick, Adrian?
My son tested positive for COVID a week ago.
Oh, I'm so sorry. That's
Yeah.
stressful.
Yeah, he's okay. He's fine. I mean, it was a couple of days of it looked like flu. It did, even the nurse practitioner thought it was the flu and was surprised when he
Yeah.
tested positive for COVID, but he's better now. And we skipped Christmas. Well, external Christmas. We had our internal Christmas, which is all the kids really care about, is the
Yeah.
5:45 a.m. wake up,
How
So
old is he? I don't know how old your kids are.
my son is 10 and my daughter's 7.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Second and
You-
fourth grade. They're really
But
fun.
your
Yeah.
daughter didn't get it, Adrian?
She didn't. I mean, she was a presumed positive because that's basically how they deal with it. I brought them both in together to sick call, and my son tested positive for COVID and negative for flu, and my daughter tested negative for both. But the nurse practitioner said, for all intents and purposes, if she's asymptomatic, then we're going to consider her positive. And if she becomes symptomatic, then you're going to consider that day 0. She never did. So we just have been here.
Yeah.
I have a friend
Like a-
who was supposed to be flying to London tomorrow with he and his wife to visit their daughter and grandson and son-in-law. They had 150,000 new cases today
In London?
in Britain, I think. But 150,000, the highest ever.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I was like shocked that I made it this far into the pandemic without having gotten it or gotten, my kids getting it because they, went back to school in September, and I work with the public, but here we are. Now it's everybody. It's everywhere. That's how I feel about it anyways. If you could be like, I mean, I was under house arrest for like 15 months with my kids home. So if you made it this far and now you're getting it, it's like everybody's going to get it. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Well, it looks like everybody's here. Hi, Mark. Hi, Dave. Hi, Dan. Hi, Noelle. Hi, Liam. And hi, Adrian.
Hello.
And I guess we can maybe, it's 5:31. And so I guess we're hitting recording and we'll go ahead and get started.
Yeah.
My name is Heidi Wakeman. I'm the chairwoman of the Open Space and Recreation Committee. We're meeting on Wednesday, December 29th at 5:30. Consistent with Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting will be conducted by remote participation. The public may not physically attend this meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time and participate when necessary. Persons who wish to do so are invited to view the meeting at the Gloucester Zoom address available on the website of the city or join by phone. In the event that a live transmission proves unworkable for any reason, or an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of the meeting will be made available on the city's website as soon as possible. And I'll just do a roll call formally. Present today, we have Dan Morris,
Present.
Dave Sargent,
Here.
Richard Quaitman, Mark Poulin,
Present.
Noel Mann,
I still
Here.
can't fix that on my computer.
and Liam Anastasia Murphy.
Here.
And City Representative Adrian Lennon.
Hi,
And-
everyone.
And member Heidi Wakeman. So I believe that I just want to go ahead, and I have no communications as the chairperson. And other than, I guess that I have one bit of communications, which is I will be meeting with Young Legends, Carl Ellis and Senator Tarr, to talk about helping the funding and moving forward with that project sometime in January. So I'm excited, and that's a recreation betterment of Stage Fort Park, as maybe you've seen it behind the dog park, the basketball courts.
Yeah.
But just wanted to say that's about all I got. So at this time, I do see we have one member of the public here. So Jeff Brown, if you would like to share for, we have a 3-minute limit, but I do want to acknowledge that you're here and give you a chance if I can have a timer. Jeff, do you have anything that you would like to share, or? Yep. Thanks.
Sure. Hi there. It's Jeff Brown, Essex Ave. I've got a pre-written statement today. I timed it. Should be just under 3 minutes. Hopefully I can
Terrific.
make
Thank
that
you.
work. Sure. So today I'd like to comment on MAPC's role in creating the open space plan. As consultants that are being paid by the city, one might think that we're getting unbiased, objective guidance in creating the plan. However, my research seems to prove otherwise. On October 1st, I received this email response from MAPC Regional Planner, Courtney Lewis. Quote, I also believe that in order to promote greater equity throughout the Boston region, it is also important to facilitate access to public open spaces, areas, and parks across municipal lines. There are people throughout the Commonwealth that are unable to afford homes near the beach or in areas with well-maintained parks. Therefore, providing access to open space areas and parks to non-city residents, especially those acquired or improved with state and or federal monies, is an important equity concern, end quote. And on October 13th, I received an email response from MAPC's Land Use Division Director, Mark Rassicott. Quote, when we talk about regionally important resources, we are highlighting sites that are large enough and or sufficient interest that people from other communities may wish to go to Gloucester to use them, end quote. So here, both Mr. Rassicott and Mr. Lewis have made it pretty clear that MAPC has some type of stake in the outcome of the plan. This is problematic. For one, there doesn't seem to be a mechanism in place that would help MAPC handle information that comes along that isn't congruent with their aims, such as some of the survey feedback data provided by Gloucester residents. For example, the majority of residents said that they were concerned about non-residents using open space and recreation facilities. And this particular slide had icons for overcrowding, trash, litter, lack of parking. So how, I asked the committee, will solicited feedback such as this be incorporated into the open space plan? So in the October 13th email from Mr. Rassicot, he also wrote, quote, "The purpose of the city undertaking an open space and recreation plan is to enable the city to obtain feedback from residents and business owners and to make plans for city's open space resources," end quote. So as I end my comment today, I just would like to say that as a Gloucester resident, I hope the committee works hard to create an open space plan that truly reflects the values and wishes of the residents of the community. Thank you. How'd I do?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
You
you,
did
Jeff.
great. You
You're
had
welcome.
15 seconds to spare, Jeff.
Oh, super. All right. Thank you.
Nice job.
Thanks.
Okay, before you move on, I want to just come in and hijack administrative briefing very, very quickly and say, in the new year, I think that this entire committee can expect some correspondence from the mayor's office with regards to the status of your appointments and whether or not you may need to be coming up for reappointment. I know some of you are filling pre-existing appointment cycles, so you were not necessarily appointed to a vacant seat. You were appointed to or you were not necessarily appointed to a 3-year term. You were appointed to complete a vacancy. So if that's the case, and you are up for reappointment in this next couple of months, you're going to see some correspondence from the mayor's office, essentially communicating that to you. My understanding is that if you are up for reappointment, you actually do not have to appear before City Council. They will take it as part of their consent agenda, but I don't know that for sure yet because I haven't seen the council convene and I'm not exactly positive of what their rules are going to be because they obviously haven't met to approve them. So stand by on that, but just in case you're, get sort of surprised what appears like surprise correspondence, it's because appointments on a normal regular schedule are made to begin to be made on February 28th of every year. So it's typically the first order of business in each new year is to review all the appointments and make them. So that's all. If you see nothing, then you're good for this year.
But there was that, I do know there was that Google form that came around. Did folks
Yep.
have a chance to do that? Yeah, that was about something a little different, but
Yes.
nothing else. Great.
Yeah. All right, that's all.
Okay. Great. Well, I think that we have one major point of business for tonight's meeting, correct? This
Yes, that's
working
correct.
on the next section. And so I think Adrian, it's
Yeah.
take it away.
Well, so do you want to look at the section 8 I just circulated, which I think is a really clean copy? I feel pretty good about it. I want to make sure that I captured all the language we had talked about. I can certainly share my screen. Hold on. Let me put it up in the right one. I'm going to put all of you over here. All right. There we go. Now I can see everybody. So, oh, I got too much happening. Hold on. So I did circulate this around to everyone. the first and second page, obviously this is a very clean copy. But the language on the first page really didn't change very much, except that I did add the piece in here about the public way, because farther down the line, we have a conversation around what the multimodal forms of transport, and those don't actually happen necessarily on either open space or recreation land by our definitions. So we wanted to include that. And hold on, I wish I had that little annotation guy. Okay, I guess I don't. And that's kind of the final discussion on page 1. On page 2, just for everybody's reference and for my own reference, I did just create a summary of the goals. The language is reduced somewhat in an effort to try to get really concise about what the goals are, and then expand more through objectives. So this was what I landed on for the language of the goals. I'll give you a minute to read it over, and just bear in mind, if you have thoughts or comments on it, we'll make a note and then come back around to it. But as we're looking at this and thinking about these goals, when I was putting together the table, I was thinking of them each as, the goals would be identified sort of separately from the rest of the table, wherein you're talking about responsible parties and timelines. And so each of the objectives around each goal is going to be considered in the table. Okay, so for example,
Hey,
goal
do you
number 1.
mind, just my eyes are old. Do you mind just making it a little bit bigger?
Oh yeah, sure,
Thank
sure.
you.
Yeah. Okay, is that better? I can make it even bigger. I can. Okay. So we remember these very clearly. Develop and direct a program of strategic preservation of open space and recreation lands using the inventory produced for this plan. This is goal number 1. We moved it to the top at the very beginning because we decided, the most important thing to do was to define what our lands are and what we most especially need to do with them, which is to try to conserve them. So objective A is this focus of land conservation efforts. And you'll see I made everything formatted as an objective with a sort of small paragraph discussion about what it is. These are each action items, creating a common pathway for conserving land, and then transferring the following parcels. And these are, identifiers inside of an action item. So the Dogtown Parcel Cluster, North Gloucester Woods, city beaches and adjacent marshlands, and city parks and active recreation areas that are not already permanently protected obviously should be moved into a state of permanent protection by way of conservation restriction. And objective B, for example, hasn't changed at all. Continue to refine and improve the open space inventory by identifying and reconciling the following parcel types. These are just comes directly out of the data that we were working with from the tax assessors database where we have these unknowns. Or we have this unknown definition of whether or not they are protected. And the consensus, as we know, is just generally to assume that it's not protected and proceed rather than spending a lot of time trying to work backwards through title documents and things like that. And then monitor the open space database, objective C, an inventory that obviously is intended to be an annual event. These are the action items attached to it, right? And it means specifically, doing the annual update, trying to tie that update cycle in with the Community Preservation Act program, confirming conservation restriction held by the commission. That's anything that's new. And then open space, identify and preserve public access rights of way to interior open spaces. And then D also has not changed. Promote and support the acquisition of and permanent protection via conservation restriction of the following parcel types. And this, we have already identified what our priorities are for conservation lands. So just as an overview, as I'm looking at objective 1 or goal number 1, I consider, the objective A to be actually the only one that is not of an ongoing time frame, because The others are, this refine and improve is the inventory is intended to be maintained on an annual basis. And that kind of reflects what the expectations are for B and C. And then of course for D, it's going to be an ongoing goal to support the acquisition of land for as long as we have land to acquire, right? So I do want to put, or maybe we can have this conversation right on top here. Different open space plans define their timeline either as high, medium, or low, or short, medium, or long term, or ongoing. And then there are some that say 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, 5 to 7 years. So it's up to you guys how you want to talk about it. And maybe you want to discuss amongst yourself before we move forward. Anybody? No?
I don't understand.
So,
Go ahead. I know I'm looking away. It's because I might have you all on the other screen. But go ahead, Gary.
Adrian, this is Dan. I think what you're saying is the task is to start refining these into priority time frame and action department or individual. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And so, but where goal number 1 is not a great example because objectives B, C, and D are always going to be ongoing. Right.
Right.
The only one that's really on a shorter or maybe a finite time limit is objective 1.
Might it
because
be,
it's, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I was just wondering if to initiate the conversation, might it be helpful to start with something that's a more discrete task?
Sure. Sure. I just want to introduce the idea before I move on.
Thank you
Yeah.
for that. But I agree with you that these ongoing ones are really maybe harder to characterize in that tabular form.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Now here, goal number 2, improve the management and stewardship of Gloucester's open space, including conservation lands, trails, forests, and vista points. And for both goal number 2, which wherein we're focusing about open space, and goal number 3, where we're focusing on recreation lands, areas, and facilities, I went right ahead and just made priority objective number 1 the discussion around increasing operational and capital budgets towards personnel and programming to support the interests of both of those entities. And I did that on purpose to really, and I also actually did this in section 5, in goal number 5, in the discussion around sustainability and climate change, to point out clearly that there are 3 different jobs to be done here. There's a job around open space coordinating and management. There's a job around parks and recreation management, and there's a job around sustainability management. And very easily could be 3 different people. So I put them all in different places. And my hope is that wherever you all decide you want that priority to be for these positions to exist, that you pick the same thing for all 3 of them, if you decide it's a short, medium, or long-term objective. Okay, so that's the first one. Increase operational and capital budgets for more personnel to focus on the city's open space system. Implement an annual reporting and reconciliation mechanism to the city's annual budget cycle to outline short-term and long-term maintenance needs. And then objective B, these are set up very similarly between the 2 goals about specific to land use and management. This is about implementing land management plans. So, I consider this to be a whole objective, and I think that a lot of these things would happen all together, right? So again, when we're looking at this as a tablet, it's sort of I did not say how many land management plans. And in the past, I did identify specific properties, which I actually pulled out of the discussion here because I thought it was like a little bit too confusing. And there was an ask for more clarity around what it meant to be a priority parcel or what it meant, what a land management plan meant. So I decided that I wasn't helping by identifying. What I had done was I had identified a beach, a park, a landing, a recreational field area, and something else, a woodland or something. I think I had Dogtown in there. And I took that language out of it because it clearly wasn't, it was confounding the discussion, it seemed. So now what that means is that objective B is not actually specifically tied to any place. And I wanted to kind of know what your thoughts are on that, if you like that idea or if you dislike that idea and you want to go back into saying we want a land management plan for Dogtown parcel cluster in 3 to 5 years, which is a significantly more concrete objective than to say develop and implement land management plans for clusters of land according to these certain parameters. So what are your thoughts? Dave, go ahead.
I prefer the bigger net, that you cast rather than the smaller net that was previously there. This
Okay.
tends to encompass, we can probably catch many more fish.
Okay. Anybody else on that, Liam?
Yeah, I agree. I like this better than the last one.
Okay.
I think it gives us more flexibility to go after things and
Yeah.
make sure we get everything that we want to get in there.
Okay, great. Richard, go ahead. You're muted. Now you're really muted. I don't think your headphones are working.
Phones are off. Does that work?
Okay.
better?
That's better.
Oh, okay. Strange. Right, since we identify the priority parcels up in goal number 1, this seems reasonable. I do have a question though. What is meant by environmental hazards in D?
So that would be, for example, places where we have aerial flooding issues that have to be resolved, or where we have historic infrastructure like point source discharges that probably should come out of the earth.
Okay.
It's largely like old engineering design that
That's what I was thinking. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, historic land use that may pose a risk to the parcels.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Right. Okay. You want me to keep going? I can keep going here. And I'm glad that, thank you for that feedback. I'm glad that worked out. So now here, objective C, promote responsible and careful use of open space by expanding awareness of stewardship needs through public outreach and education. This stuff has not changed. Develop and install signage and adopt trail standards, rules and regulations, maps, guides, and education material, and host the resources. And then, of course, developing the partnerships. Also, this language has not changed. So in goal number 3, I restructured things a little bit because I'm continuing to try to make it more clear and linear. And at this point, I feel like I've really overthought it, so I have no idea if it is really. But anyway, so goal number 3, maintain, enhance, and expand Gloucester's recreation lands, including parks, playgrounds, athletic fields, beaches, and public landings, which is a huge ball of wax, right? But again, right at the top on objective A, I've said establish a Parks and Recreation division within the Department of Community Development. This is Dave Sargent's firm statement, so I will take it with me to the bank to support the organization and development of associated programming. The organization and development of associated programming. So that's a Parks and Rec division, everyone. And then we incorporated this 10-year Parks and Recreation Capital Improvement Plan for all Gloucester athletic fields, courts, and playgrounds to determine facilities maintenance and programming management needs. So up at the top, in goal number 2, we have land management plans. In goal number 3, we're talking about a Parks and Recreation Capital Improvement Plan. And then there's the sort of parameters that we anticipate around the plan, a standard inventory or report, which would include ADA accessibility, bathroom facilities and trash, overuse and appropriate use, safety and lifespan of existing equipment, and then maintenance procedures in regulated areas. In this case, there's a big discussion around we're maintaining fields and recreation areas in ways in watershed lands that we maybe should not be doing according to the responsibilities of the Water Department and Conservation Department, the Wetlands Protection Act, and Surface Drinking Water Program, DEP Drinking Water Program. So that's something we need to evaluate and maybe make some changes to, but that's what we're referring to. And then here I did identify the whole host of properties that came up in the survey data, and also that we have talked about. And that is pretty direct and, short language, essentially, that says investment in the following parks, playgrounds, and athletic facilities. Stage 4 Park, St. Peter's Park, Middleton Park, Green Street Recreation Area, and the head of the Harbor Park. Playgrounds, East Gloucester Playground, Ben Smith Playground. I didn't include Stage 4 Park Playground in there because it's up at the top. And then athletic facilities, Swinson Field, Burnham Field, Beeman basketball courts, O'Malley Innovation Middle School fields, track and skateboard park, and then the Gloucester High School fields. So if I'm wrong about any of these recreation areas and facilities, or I've miscategorized them, or you feel like something is a better fit for a park than it is for an athletic field or something like that, you have to tell me, because I didn't play Little League in Gloucester, so I don't necessarily know every single baseball field in town. Go ahead, Noel.
I'm wondering about Swinson's Park. I don't think there's Swinson's Field. I don't think there's anything there.
There's no recreation field there. Is that correct? Or is it's an open
There is a
field?
rundown, overgrown ball
Right.
field.
And
And
it's
basketball.
partially paved.
Okay, so it
Well,
is
there's two parts of Swinson's Field.
Ah.
There's the first part has a basketball court, and that's paved. And then further on, there is an unkempt, but it's quite a nice, lovely, quite a nice parcel of, you could have a softball game there. Like, I don't think if there's not a backstop though or anything, is there, Mark?
There is, I think there's a little backstop,
Yeah, maybe there
if I
is.
remember correctly, but there's no outfield fence, because it sort of
Right.
just goes uphill and ends.
Yeah.
So it's definitely more conducive to, say, coach pitch and, the younger kids kind of
Yeah.
playing. Or
Okay.
even softball or something like that.
okay.
And I think
Go ahead.
the Green Street, I think you have that up in the park section, but that, again, that's sort of encompasses both athletic. I don't know which, if it's mostly a park, it goes up in section A, or if it's an athletic facility, it goes down in C.
I'm flexible on either. I just want to make sure you are all happy with where I have filed things, because I just don't necessarily know how you would take it, because I
would think that Green Street would want to be under athletic, yeah, down at C then. That's it.
okay, no problem. And then investment in the following activities, sports and activities I separated here. Baseball, softball, soccer, tennis, pickleball, basketball, skateboarding, and then activities, bocce ball, of course, came up. We got to wave at them, say hi. And then dog walking, which is up and everywhere, right? Go ahead, Richard.
I would just put bocce, get rid of all, put bocce up in sports, just
Okay.
to not tick off a bunch of people.
Oh, I don't know this community.
Yeah,
Bocce people. I'm going to put them next to pickleball, though.
Okay, I play pickleball.
Like that's their, right? There's a cultural association there. Okay,
I have heard from folks about, in particular with the Gloucester High School fields, I think because we had that huge investment of the New Balance field, I think that the tennis courts at the high school, I don't know if we want to mention them specifically, but I know they are neglected, and I don't know if we can put that specifically, but I'd like to do that. And then I
you're
don't know.
offering it, so you get to do that.
Okay, and then I don't know where Middleton Park is.
Middleton Park was on my list. Oh, go ahead, Dave. Dave has the answers.
Right, Middleton Playground is actually it was a basketball place on Friend Street.
Oh,
And
yeah.
for some reason, people just use this for parking, their cars, because there's very little parking. And so in
Yes.
talking to many of the neighbors, they wanted to turn that back into more of a recreational facility than currently it is now.
Yeah, that was Jerry. Talked a lot about that. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah,
Like you got something there.
Am I muted? No, okay. Magnolia Fields are a relatively recent big investment that just need to be maintained. I think they're in good,
Are they in there?
under athletic facilities. Just
Magnolia
put it in?
Woods. Yeah, Magnolia Woods.
Magnolia Woods, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Magnolia Woods. Okay. I thought they, yeah.
And Heidi mentioned that she was meeting later this month with the Street Legends program. And I believe that's street hockey we're talking about. And would that be something to mention, as it is a, kind of an active organization that has the ear of Senator Tar? Perhaps it's something to mention there. Thank you.
Okay, objective C, develop, and this is now beaches, develop beach management, maintenance and management plans to assess capital improvement needs and routine maintenance protocols to enhance and protect all Gloucester beaches. Here I've used pretty much the same language on generate a standard inventory or report, ADA accessibility, bathroom facilities, trash pickup, overuse and appropriate use, safety and lifespan of existing equipment, or I suppose I could say facilities there, and then maintenance procedures in regulated areas. And here I've used National Heritage Endangered Species Program habitat for piping plovers and floodplain. And then prioritize the investment in the following beaches. We essentially named all of them, almost all of them. I suppose I could throw Pavilion in there, and then everything else would be like a private beach, right, or an association beach, I think. Good Harbor, Niles Beach, Cressy's Beach, Plum Cove Beach, and Winger Chic. And then the following activities: sports, volleyball, surfing, and dog walking and bird watching. Any thoughts and prayers on beaches? Go ahead, Richard.
One just for public perception, I'd alphabetize the beaches because it looks like something is more important than others. Just a minor thing. And I'd add in just walking in terms of activities, because that's people just come and walk the beach.
Okay. Is that alpha? C-D?
Adrian, I know we've read this a couple of times now. I'm just, it's now just dawning on me that it seems odd that such a plan doesn't already exist. I don't know of one, and I've done a Google search or two, but are you familiar with any existing plan? I mean, as focal
in
points for our
Gloucester?
community. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been asking for a beach management plan in Gloucester for 3 years.
Okay.
Good Harbor Beach actually does have a beach management plan that dates back, I think, to 2006. And that has not been updated since then. Go ahead, Dave.
We also have one for Wingashi.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, they're very old. They don't really take into account a lot of the discussion that happens today around management planning.
Okay.
And it will be a big undertaking. And frankly, it requires interdepartmental focus and consideration to raise the funds, bring in the consultant, do the interviews, because you're doing, wetlands delineation and also identifying all the structures on site and the quality of those structures. And when you start really going into that stuff, you find out the things that you kind of knew were true but didn't want to hear, and then have to make emergency investments.
Well,
And
some-
so
some-
ultimately that has slowed down the process significantly.
Might some of that analysis have been done with the recent resiliency plan?
So the resiliency plan didn't look that closely at properties.
Okay. All right,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah. It did an overview, but it didn't sort of look directly at a particular municipal liability and do, a reconstruction of what its needs are, except in the case, I suppose, of the wastewater treatment plant, which of course is the highest priority. Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, so we did have a city beach committee back in the early 80s, which I chaired for a while. We had a Plum Cove Beach management plan there that looked at the drainage outlets. The city doesn't have a beach committee anymore, does it?
No.
No, I didn't think so. Because as you point out, Adrian, quite correctly, just Objective C is a huge undertaking.
Yeah, I mean, this document is like my manifesto. This is like 3 years of conservation and environmental management work to say, like, okay, this is what you need to do, Gloucester.
Right.
You know?
Shoot for the moon.
Yeah, this is the whole thing. Anyway, so let's see. Anyways, Objective D, in full disclosure, I did interview a lot of department heads, and I interviewed, the entire management team and supervisory team of the DPW for a lot of information too. So I did get a lot of feedback from them, in addition to already being inside of planning and community development. And this actually came partly in part from the harbor master himself. So evaluate and improve existing public landings to serve and promote boating, recreational aquatics, and fishing. Review and update as needed the land management agreements with the Division of Marine Fisheries for County Landing, the Dud Fudgeon Boat Ramp, Long Wharf Stone Pier, Corliss Landing, and Lanes Cove Landing. I have a couple of my own sort of pipe dream projects in here, and well, they're not in here actually in my head, and I'm going to find a way to roll them in, but I haven't yet. And one of them anyways is to really invest in and improve Corliss Landing, because I think it's like a diamond in the rough in Gloucester. And there's such a great opportunity there to improve public access to the water. And also just like, it's a nice big piece of property where you have really good, mid and high tide access to the water in a safe spot in the river. And it's just totally neglected and overlooked. So I may find a way to incorporate that here into the discussion, even though the harbor master probably wouldn't want me to do that. Anyways, he really wants to focus on the following public landings: replace existing dock and float systems at Cripple Cove, St. Peter's Park, the Annisquam Footbridge, and the city's 2 commercial marinas in Gloucester Harbor. And then create a new water recreation access point at Stage Fort Park. So prioritizing investment in the following activities: kayaking and swimming, or sports, kayaking and swimming, and activities, community boating and sailing and fishing. So any thoughts?
I would like to add paddleboarding, stand-up paddleboarding for sports.
And since we've gone through this now a couple of times, I'm going to hearken you back to goal number 2, where we were talking about open space. And we had kind of a lively discussion at our last meeting about what activities and sports to include in the discussion around open space use. And it was climbing and mountain biking and hiking and walking, and all of that I ended up cutting out of it as part of, pulling out the discussion around priority locations, because I have kind of put the two together, priority locations and priority activities. So just think about that if you want me to roll it back into goal number 2. And then,
Before we move on.
oh, go ahead. Yeah, let's talk about landings. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I've been a little frustrated that some of the landings don't get even basic maintenance. And so this evaluate and improve existing Gloucester public landings. Can we, can we insert something and perform basic maintenance to ensure all public landings are serviceable? I mean, for the last 2 years, I've been the one who's cleared Kent Landing. And I'd like that to be done routinely. I don't want to lose that right away. So I imagine there are others in the city. That's one I particularly care about.
Well, there are a number of landings that simply don't exist anymore, that have been subsumed into private property. I think we need to redo the list.
Right. So I would just like to be more assertive here, and this is maybe what the harbor master cares to say, but I think the committee has some say here, and I would like to be more assertive that evaluate and improve existing public landings to serve and promote boating and recreational activities and fishing, period. Perform,
Regular annual maintenance.
Annual maintenance.
And inventory.
Yeah, inventory and maintenance to ensure all public landings are serviceable, safe and serviceable, and maybe that full stop.
Right, safe and serviceable. Good.
There are some public landings such as Clay Pit Public Landing that where that would not be applicable. So, maybe say we're applicable, or because there were some that are still on the books, but there's really no.
Long gone.
Well, they're there in paper, but in reality, in nature, it doesn't work.
Okay.
That's part of the inventory.
I guess I'm concerned that an overworked harbor master has the discretion to decide what is accessible. And still in use. And I think that's one reason that Kent Landing has been written off and is no longer serviced. My sense is, and I've been unable to get the harbor master on the phone. So it's on this topic, but my sense is that they're very, very overworked. And if we're not specifically documenting, the landings that we want, either it says all, or we specifically mention the ones that we want to ensure are maintained, we're going to lose them, or they'll just fall to the wayside again. I'd like to be able to point to something in the plan that says, our harbor master needs some help, needs additional funding, additional staff, or whatever the thing is, or support from whatever to perform this task that's specified in this plan.
Yeah, I don't believe any of the 3 public landings in Little River are maintained well enough by the city. So you have a good point. But
So
there are some other ones that it's just not practical.
All right. Hold that thought. Everybody hold that thought. Let me go on to the next one, because I split things up a little bit differently. And I just want to share with you kind of what I came up with in objective 3. manage programming and supervision of recreation lands through the city website using new and existing service portals while prioritizing Gloucester residents' access. So gather feedback about user experiences and create a system of reporting problems like trash and traffic management that is accessible to the public. This should be very easy for us to do through SeeClickFix. We already have the software there. We just don't promote it as a way to report this issue, and we don't have like a very distinct location for that particular issue to go to. It just, when people want to complain about trash, they find their way to SeeClickFix, and then it kind of goes into the big bucket of information from the portal. But that can be managed. The data on the back end can be managed better through IT so that it goes to a place where there's, an actionable timeline for pickup and things like that. And then number 2 was identify public access rights of way to the water via public landings, including driftways and tidelands, and publish an online map for public use. So we do have actually in engineering, it was not in the possession of the harbor master. The engineering department actually has a very good inventory of public landings. That goes back, 50 or 60 years. So it's not going, we don't have any new public landings, that's for sure. They're more being decommissioned than anything else. So we do have a record to work from, and an inventory to work from. We just need to have an intern basically input all that information, attach it to the parcel database of the inventory that we have so that it can be published as part of MapGeo. And then we know where all of our landings are. But we, in terms of creating, I think, visibility is really the first step in trying to attract improvement in maintenance and use. So
Yes,
I think,
agree. Thank you.
yeah. So Dan, I think for your comment up at the top to talk about all landings and then talk about these are the landings that we're going to put new, dock and float systems on, which is a pretty big financial investment.
Right.
I totally agree with you. I think that's a very good idea to say all, because we do have an inventory list of all, and we absolutely can hand it over to the harbor master and say, please survey your responsibilities. Yeah, go ahead, Noel.
I'm concerned about, there are as many as 3 public paths, or presumably public, they're used by the public, from the cemetery in Lanesville down to the water.
Okay.
I don't know how we classify them. It's rocky shore, and but they're well used by the public.
Are they already it's already part of the public land right there. I think that actually it is a landing. I remember having this conversation with Joe Lucido about it actually.
Well, Lanes Cove is, but this is further south of that.
Off the, it's
Of the
steward of the
cemetery.
cemetery.
Most of the cemetery is Rockport land.
Yes.
And
yes.
there are many signs, no dog walking and so on and so forth. And cemeteries themselves are a bit of an issue, I think, because they're certainly available for, not all of them, but.
The area that Noel's talking about is called Flat Rocks. And people do walk down there a lot. The landing I think that Adrian's thinking about is Folly Cove Landing.
That's right.
It is a landing further down. The sign that
Further north.
Right. The sign that I always remember in those cemeteries is the one that says, "One way, do not enter."
Well, there are a lot more now. The cemeteries committees has done a fabulous job with a lot of the city properties, but it's still, people. This is another example of misuse. Despite signs posting no dog walking and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and since we're talking about it, this has come up again. I have a confession to make. I dropped the ball on cemeteries, and they are not in this great big outline. So I still need to find a home for the cemetery discussion.
Well, it needs updating, but there is a section of the old plan which covers the cemetery pretty well, cemeteries pretty well.
Yeah,
Maybe
And
you
I'm
could
sure-
just mention,
yeah, yep.
Aren't they covered by the cemetery commission?
yes,
So
Well, I think
are we
that-
overreaching?
I think the cemetery, there, half of them are public and half of them are private. So it's only the public ones, and some are owned by the Catholic, there's Mount Adna, which is Annisquam, and, it's about half and half.
I think it's arguable that cemeteries aren't really, yes, they're used for passive recreation for people
Yeah.
walking, but it's not really I don't consider it open space. It's
Yeah,
designated for internment.
right. Yeah, so DCR does designate cemeteries as open space because in some
Yeah.
places in the Commonwealth, they're actually really parklands. You think about
Mm.
Mount
for-
Auburn Cemetery and things like that.
And particularly the Lanesville, Seaview and Seacrest, whatever, Rockport or not, they're heavily used for access to the ocean, flat rocks.
Yeah, Flat Rocks, that's cool. So I will find a home for that in objective 2, but I think it's just going to be kind of a quick comment on cemeteries because we already have an entirely separate body assigned to managing that.
Well, yeah,
Anyways, you're right. That is not a landing. And thank you, Dave, for being here for that, Folly Cove. So identifying public access rights of way to the water, publishing as an online map for public use. Incorporate parking information in online maps and guides to open space and recreation lands, and develop a schedule of user fees for recreational activities, receive funds via an online service portal into a designated fund for open space and recreation land management, maintain a public calendar for facility reservations and special events, use a registration form via an online service portal to complete reservations. So objective E is really pointing at the IT department to saying, we need help. We need software support. We need web forms. We need a place to host this stuff, and we need the public to be able to access it. And so I took these pieces came from other objectives, and I kind of put them all together here because that way I could kind of pull out the IT request for open space and recreation land management. And we can, I think, actually put that on a shorter timeline schedule than some other things because there are going to be process improvements for both the DPW and the community development department, and also potentially revenue generators, because I'm certain that we do not have a high functioning fee schedule for recreational facilities reservations right now. And even that small step would, I think, do a lot for raising funds to support open space and recreation lands. So I wanted to take it out and make sure all those things come together with one of the high performing departments in the city, because I think that we can actually get IT on board pretty quickly and easily. So that's E.
What about, there's a lot of scuba activity off the coves. That should be included as
Sports?
one of the activities. Beaches and landings. There's even a school operating out of Folly Cove.
A scuba school?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Cool.
And Folly Cove, incidentally, is not owned by the city. It's one of those unknown parcels.
Okay. Thank you, Noel. All right. Any other thoughts on objective E? Anything that you are all thinking about that you want to see on a website? Dan, I have your stuff all together in one place, and I didn't want to break it up because I think it's really clean the way it is. And so, other than that, other ideas about what we want to see on website for public access points, for user convenience, anything like that, education materials? No, good. Okay. All right. Goal 4 is to improve gateways, to protect and improve gateways to and strategic connections between open space and recreation areas. So here we go, Dan. I'm going to just pause and let you read this, and you can tell me if I got it all right. Because I had it in the track changes in some cases and comments. And I think it's right, but I'm not sure. Go ahead, Noah.
Roman numeral 4, I think that could be covered in one sentence, and it's something that we could have as an aside. It's kind of too wordy, too specific. I mean, it should be part of the planning. I mean, an outcome of the planning as opposed to a directive.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I wonder if this is, I take Noel's point. The
Just a directive to identify issues, specific issues and problems, and remediate.
Right, and make it routine.
Yeah.
On an annual basis, poll cyclist.
We could separate that, compile a list and make that 4.
You could,
Yeah.
right, that covers most of it.
Maybe we could adopt that by reference. I don't, if we could include that list elsewhere in the document.
Okay.
You know, I think there are a couple of.
Maybe there could be an appendix for bike safety issues.
Yeah.
I don't think the planning is, I don't think that's.
No, but in the narrative of the first 1 or 2 sections, you know, perhaps it could be I don't know, an information box or something. So just so that I really like to see that in the plan.
Okay.
That list in particular. And then here we could, you know, compile and update a list of safety concerns and consult with DPW departments to address them, you know, on a routine basis.
I agree that it should be, those specific points should be in the document. I think finding a place for them specifically is important, and just there, we don't need to push it forward to get the data if we already know it. We know these are targeted areas that need attention, and I think that's important.
Yeah.
Okay.
Those are of a scale of detail that isn't addressed elsewhere in this particular part of the document, and so, but including them elsewhere would be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I saved it, and I'm holding on to it over now in a separate document. And so I think actually having it in like a little inset box is a really good idea.
Thank you.
That would be a good way to represent it. Okay. Objective B, improve parking by identifying and enumerating suitable parking at entrances to popular open space and recreation areas. specifically talking about parking here. Promote alternative methods of reserving parking for non-residents using an electronic reservation system at beaches and parks. Develop a parking program for surfers using Good Harbor Beach before hours, and identify and improve parking access at Mount Ann and Red Rocks recreation areas. Those were the really high points of parking issues in the city. I'm sure there are others. I'm happy to add to this. I don't want it to become a list similar to what we were just discussing about varying locations of, bicycle accidents and pedestrian issues. But if there are other really big ones that we're missing that we think are exemplary of common issues in the city, then we should mention them. No? Okay. Okay, improve ADA accessibility at all Gloucester open space and recreation areas. Conduct a comprehensive ADA self-evaluation and inventory and develop a plan to incorporate all accessibility upgrades needed when maintaining and improving recreation facilities. Work with the Council on Aging and other community groups to create and improve existing recreation facilities for passive leisure, especially those that are proximate to elderly residential areas. I gave ADA accessibility a totally separate objective, in addition to also commenting on it in capital improvement plan and land management plans, because that is how we are going to gather this information, is by employing a separate planning exercise specifically for ADA accessibility. There's a lot more money for that. And so this actually is something that we should try to do first before getting into land management plans and capital improvement plans, because then we'll have that information already on hand. Go ahead, Noel.
CATS has developed a plan that with CATA, the bus service, which describes points at which people can start recreating or walking in the woods and trails, and then be picked up by the next bus. They have it mapped, and the trails are identified.
Oh, that's cool. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I was wondering the sense of the committee, perhaps regarding a recommendation here, subparagraph 3, that might call for a ADA accessible trail demonstration project. I've seen such things in national parks, and it's just it has to do with the evenness of surface and the gentleness of the slope. And I'm sure there's a specialty, of professional specialty that could help with the design and building of such accommodations.
Actually, so speaking of ADA accessible trail demonstration project, opening before the Conservation Commission January 5th is a resurfacing of the walking path at Good Harbor Beach for ADA compliance.
Oh, okay.
So we are actually going to have an ADA accessible trail, not Good Harbor Beach, I'm sorry, at Sage Fort Park. So where there's like a paved surface, that surface is going to be extended, and out to the cannons is going to be made all ADA accessible.
Okay.
Wow, not easy.
Yeah, it's actually, there's some tough grades in there where there's going to be some manipulating a little bit to try to make it.
Need elevators.
Yeah. Yeah.
Adrian,
So but hopefully it is all going to work. Yeah.
Adrian, what is a self-evaluation?
So here we did call it self-evaluation because that was part of the initial planning, open space plan review. But we don't need to do a self-evaluation. We can probably find some money to get a separate evaluation on that. There are multiple different ways to do the ADA assessments. It's so popular and important now that you can actually enroll in a program and receive an entire package to do the evaluation yourself inside of the municipality, if you're able to assign the staff time to do the work, to go around and look at every single one. I think it's fair to say that unless we're staffing those departments that we referenced earlier, chances are we're going to be hiring a consultant to do that. So I'm totally fine with removing self from the discussion and just saying evaluation and inventory, or inventory and evaluation, I suppose, goes in order. Go ahead, Richard.
Can I also suggest that at the end of objective C, improve accessibility at all Gloucester open space recreation areas, comma, to the extent feasible? Because
Yes.
some of these just, they're not going to be ADA compliant. But I love that that we have this as a major goal or major objective, and that we're getting this Good Harbor Beach trail. That's lovely.
Yeah, Stageport Park, sorry.
To Stageport Park, yes,
Park.
sorry.
It's my fault. I said it first. And I'll put it in here because,
We can tick that off the box then.
yeah. Okay, great. Objective D, identify green languages in the city center and school zones. Expand and maintain a continuous harbor walk. Redevelop 65 Rogers Street in a manner that includes a component for a public recreational use. Use the database named squares and memorials to develop an urban trail where arts and culture can be showcased during city celebrations. And develop and implement the Safe Routes to School program to encourage pedestrian and bicycle transportation to school. Prioritize the Riverdale neighborhood's access to the O'Malley School and fields. Any other thoughts on green linkages in the city center and school zones? Courtney had some pretty good, I thought, boilerplate language in his. About identifying locations for pocket parks. And I don't know if we're interested in going down that route, if we want to try to do pocket parks and talk about them here or leave them for a different place in the discussion.
Well, one of my fantasy pocket park, which really wouldn't be a pocket, is the former Tally's gas station in the square there, overlooking St. Peter's Park.
Oh, yeah.
Because to me, that's like prime real estate. And wouldn't that be cool if that were just like a vista of the harbor? And I don't know who owns it, what's the status, but it shouldn't be a gas station.
Yeah,
I
it is.
thought that was proposed to be a dispensary.
I don't know. I don't know what the
This
status
last-
is. Do you know what's
last-
going on with that space, Adrian, or?
Let me see, hold on. I don't know if that's the dispensary. I think that this dispensary you're thinking of is over by the MAC.
Yeah. It's a beautiful location. And as I walk by or ride my bike, that I think, wow, wouldn't that be cool?
Oh,
So-
yeah. Oh, Richard, you know which one you're thinking about? This one is permitted and it's actually going to start is Essex Ave over by Cape Ann Marina.
Oh, okay.
That gas station is going to be removed and then it's going to be a gas station and marijuana dispensary on the second floor.
Tony's Mobile.
Yeah, just unbelievable.
No comment.
Yeah. Stuff.
But I think pocket parks they serve such a wonderful function just for, places of quiet.
Yeah, okay. Look at pocket parks in there. So I can do something like create additional neighborhood parks or something. There was a good expand community garden sites and create pocket parks to extend additional parkland into dense areas of the city, something like that.
And I think, I'll just say too, I think in section C, or where it says the Riverdale neighborhoods access, I think that should be Riverdale Park neighborhood, because to me, Riverdale, I believe, I don't know exactly what that means, Riverdale neighborhoods access, because you can access it pretty safely from Cherry Street, but Osmond Babson Road, a little bit less so. And I don't know if that, I think that's what Dave referenced maybe last month was, or last time we were together. So that like through the DPW or near that area, so. And then there's a pubic where there should be a public. So spell check didn't get it, but
Thank you.
you're welcome.
So there actually was like a whole exercise with Applied Geographics, I think, to define our neighborhood complex. And so this is, they decided was what Riverdale, what consists of Riverdale as a neighborhood.
Okay, well, I guess like I said, Cherry Street seems like that's a really safe, easy way to ride your bike. There's already bike signs there. There's already sharrows. And, you know, Cherry Street, that winding curvy hill, like at the
That's really
bottom,
hard.
that's very hard. But, and also even the sidewalk there, frankly, is not so great. But I feel like the other side of accessing, and maybe this is too minute, but I guess I'm thinking Riverdale neighborhood. I don't know what that means. So if it's in Riverdale itself, then
Riverdale Park access?
is that what you were suggesting, Dave, or?
That's not from Riverdale Park. That would be more Maplewood Avenue, Poplar Street, and everything up like Madison Ave and Gloucester Ave and stuff like that. That would be, you know, those students who would walk that way rather than going up, you know, Cherry Street. Riverdale Park would probably go up Osmond Babson Road, you know, to O'Malley. So I'm not sure how you would word that.
Yeah, I guess what I'm thinking is there's kids who cut through an unofficial path that skirts the DPW. And I think maybe we were, you know, dreaming about a way of increasing access or making it easier to ride your bike or walk and not go up that hill
Right.
via the, oh yeah,
That
this is so cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that informal, it goes right through the marsh, really.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
and it's not safe right now, and you know,
Yeah.
it would be nice to make it, you know, safer and more public.
Right. And then down at the bottom at the left side of the screen is that called Riverdale Park? Does it have a new name? I can't think of what it's
It's
low income housing.
Patriots Place now. They call it.
Okay, Patriots Place.
Right, right.
All right.
But
So you know, that's just
Patriots
another
Place,
important access.
usually they access it, you know, through Osmond Babson Road.
Yeah.
So.
I have to take off. Good to see everyone.
Hi, Liam.
Thanks, Liam.
I'm sorry.
Happy New Year.
Ciao. Stay safe.
Happy New Year. Likewise.
Okay. So it's going to be Riverdale neighborhood. I don't know what else to call it.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah. I mean, to me, as somebody that works there, and I just think when I see kids coming, I always ask, where do you ride your bike from? And I know for me, I live in East Gloucester, sort of, and I ride through downtown, follow the bike lanes, Maplewood Ave, Cherry Street. And some kids are coming from Captain Hook, like Riverview, and that like off of Washington Street. So I'm always just anecdotally asking kids how do you get here? And, you know, I feel, as I said, some Riverdale neighborhoods are easier to access O'Malley than others. And that's, I guess, the point of the question was, what are we talking about here?
Okay. Well, the Safe Routes to School program will look at how all kids are walking. It's like a transportation study. So essentially they will look at how people naturally interact as pedestrians or as cyclists to the location, and then try to identify where the points of least risk are located and make those the priority pathways. So that's not,
Yeah.
our,
And I know too, like Dan said too, that we have that, or they've already done that, or we have that, we should have that on file somewhere, that they've come, somebody from Mass Department of Transportation and worked with us Gloucester,
Yep.
for O'Malley, targeted, prioritizing O'Malley. So.
okay, this is gonna be Pocket Parks. I'm not gonna write that right now. Okay. Here we go. Goal 5, you guys. It's not small. Not a small goal. Plan for and incorporate the concerns of climate change and resiliency in all policies and operations programs related to open space and recreation area. Objective A, increase operational and capital budgets for personnel to focus on the city's climate change vulnerability concerns. Implement an annual reporting and reconciliation mechanism into the city's annual budget cycle that outlines short-term and long-term opportunities to become more resilient as a municipality.
Yay.
Here we go. I'm going to show you this. I just want you to know I went right ahead and just put all my thoughts down here. And so there are, 10 objectives,
I think it's great. It's great.
policy objectives. These ones we will absolutely have to prioritize on a timeline because they are plans and programs to be developed and implemented. And we obviously can't do them all at once. So increase operational and capital budgets for personnel to focus on city's climate. Oh, I got that one. Objective 1. B, develop and implement emergency management communications plans for city departments to use during disaster events. 1, determine a chain of communication among city staff for search and rescue and recovery events in watershed protection areas and drinking water supply areas. This has happened. That's why we have to talk about it. It actually happens on an annual basis. Pretty much, and is an ongoing problem. Determine a chain of communication among city staff for natural disaster events, including storms, floods, and fires. Those were the events that were considered our highest risk events in the municipal vulnerability preparedness assessment. And so at a very minimum, some communication for emergency management needs to be in place for that. We certainly learned a lot as a city about how much that was missing in 2017. Objective C, develop and implement a forestry
Adrian,
management. Oh, go ahead, Dan.
You want to read them all before we comment, or shall we go along the way?
How would you like to do it?
Well, I'm afraid I would forget.
Okay, yeah, say before you forget.
All right, so on this one, is there a city emergency management plan that already calls for a chain of communications?
No, sir, there is not.
Wow.
That is why it is number 2.
Wow, that's really remarkable. I was going to suggest that we just reference the city's emergency management plan that calls for this. Oh, okay. To me, this seems to be about emergency management rather than open space. And emergency management seems to be a core function of the city, or should be. It just seems a little misplaced to me to be here, but like we're wagging the dog. It's not that I disagree with the point, but it's just disappointing and surprising that it's not elsewhere.
Right, and you'll see as I go through a lot of this, we're talking about initiatives that are going to require the engagement and participation of other city departments. And here is the place where we've decided we're going to have a really robust conversation around climate change and resiliency and what it takes to be prepared for climate change events and the changing environment in which we live and how that impacts, our city lands, structures, and byways and flyways. And so all of these objectives actually appear in a way as though I would say wagging the dog, but this is something that we wanted to incorporate as a goal, was to have a conversation around climate change and resiliency. And so I put it all in there. Go ahead, Dave.
I'm wondering if it said departments to use during natural disaster events, rather than, like, say if it was a fire or something, or car accidents. I think that's beyond our scope. But for the open space plan, I think natural disaster events, would be within our purview.
So just remove this portion.
No, I'm thinking
No, natural, I
Right.
agree.
Oh, okay. I see.
right there. Yeah.
I have to agree with Dan, though. I think B2 is not within our purview.
Okay.
Do others think that? I don't know.
I'll tell you, I think it very much is, because as far as the Conservation Office goes, if there's an environmental event, the first person whose phone explodes is mine, with the requests from every single department for emergency certification so they can do work. And
Right, of course.
and so when the time, and however, the communication of the work that needs to be done also requires many other entities. And because there is no chain of command in place, it's all a matter of who's making the phone calls on that day for the work that they feel needs to be done first. And that is a resiliency issue, in my opinion. I would really like a resolution for the entire municipality to understand what they're going to put first in the event of a natural disaster, rather than being the call center for everyone's priority in that moment. Does that make sense?
Yep, then I'll retract my italicizing.
Okay. I don't want to determine that chain of communication on the fly the day that it happens. Okay. Implement a forestry management plan to minimize the risk of forest fire in city forests. We had actually Kleinfelder do a study on forest fire risk in Gloucester about 3 years ago or so. It was finishing up just when I started, and we've done nothing with that plan. It did identify fire roads that could be opened up and things like that, but it hasn't even seen the light of day since then. And some things have changed a little bit where we've needed to actually access some of those roads, and it makes more sense to, improve them as fire roads if we're going to be going to the trouble of bringing in mayor tree to clear them. So I've included that. I also know that that was something that the DPW director was really looking for, was a focus on forestry management. I have written in Objective D, implement the recommendations set forth in the city's updated municipal harbor plan to redevelop a sustainable Gloucester Harbor. I tell you, I don't know much about what the recommendations are going to be for this. I have not seen any of it. And I typically am running hearings or having my own meetings at the time when they have meetings. So I'm probably less cued in than most of you are on the proceedings of the harbor plan, but I'm sure there will be some high points that we can try to pull into this when the time comes. Invest in resilient design projects to protect the wastewater treatment facility from the effects of flooding, storm surge, and sea level rise. This is reporting and analyzing CSO events in the Annisquam River and Pavilion Beach. Go ahead, Dave.
I think you want sewer overflow events.
Oh.
CSO is a combined sewer stormwater events. That doesn't really impact the Annisquam River as much, but I think you want sewer overflow events. And these are sensitive resource areas that you're trying to target.
Well, it would be a combined, this, my old field, would be a combined sewer overflow, because you don't have sewer overflows unless they're combined pipe with the stormwater.
I disagree with you. My experience is in the Annisquam River, there was only one CSO, and that was at Grant Circle, and that's been remediated. You don't have any CSOs in the Annisquam River. But in Gloucester Harbor, you have a number of CSOs. But in the Annisquam River, there have been numerous sewer overflow events based on, discharge from the wastewater treatment plant, discharge from pump
Ah,
station,
okay.
as well as broken pipes from the step system.
So are they really overflow events or are they infrastructure failures?
DEP calls them surface, overflow events.
Okay.
I thought,
Consensus on language combined or just sewer overflow?
Put sewer overflow events.
We can go with Dave.
Evaluate and improve upstream stormwater management structures to improve storage and manage capacity in aerial flood events. Is this pointing to MS4 without saying it? I don't really want to do that. That is fully wagging the dog, I think. And then I don't have anything else on that because it's already such a high priority in the MVP plan. I don't think it needs more attention.
what's an aerial flood event?
Heavy rains. And I mean,
Oh.
that's the upstream that kind of causes the problem in the first place. But if we had stormwater capacity upstream, then, that's kind of our alternative solution to try to, it's that and the outfall, right? You have to do both.
Does the Greenbelt map serve to identify places where that kind of remediation is possible?
No, this would be more like hard utility infrastructure. Develop and implement a wildlife and vegetation management plan for watershed lands and water department facilities. Record and report the impact of beaver activity on surface water protection areas. Permit and fund wildlife management activities within the water department to protect the city's drinking water supply. Permit and fund ongoing invasive species and vegetation management activities where access to and maintenance of water department facilities is necessary. So this is talking about some pretty major beaver activity problems that we've had in the East Gloucester watershed for the past 30 years, but actually finally came to a head this summer when the MBTA, unbeknownst to the city, breached about a 10-foot beaver dam upstream of Babson Reservoir and flooded Babson Reservoir and almost caused a spillover event into the neighborhood below, but definitely ruined the water supply there for several months while we had to try to treat the finished water and just very clearly showed the risk that we are in terms of maintaining our surface water right now, especially in the East Gloucester watershed. And the answer to that, of course, is to continue to try to trap and remove beavers from that area. And we have these really beautiful historic aerial photos of a perennial stream that ran through Dogtown that is now a huge swampland that is going to be subject, hopefully, to a stream restoration project here in the short term. It comes up a little bit later in this plan. But the first step is actually identifying that we do need to have permits in place and money set aside to just manage the beavers in the first place. And also the vegetation management matter has to do with the dam safety issues that we've had over the past 3 or 4 years, wherein our dams themselves have been compromised because trees were allowed to grow on the slopes of them where they're supposed to be either, grass or hay fields that are hayed, or I actually have put in a request that they overseed everything with wildflower mix so that trees don't take shape, but then it also lowers the maintenance demand because grass is not really a great solution for the face of a dam either. Anyway, vegetation management programs, all in open space and watershed. Objective D, update the existing surface water protection plan to increase water storage capacity in all existing city reservoirs. Restore the Alewife Creek upstream of Babson Reservoir to a flowing perennial stream. It actually is a flowing perennial stream, but it is a much larger water body historically than what it is now. and wet forests to protect cities' drinking water supply infrastructure and recreate the surface water recharge area in the existing watershed, and complete the ongoing dam reconstruction projects at Haskell Reservoir and Goose Cove. Objective H is update the existing watershed management plan to include an expansion of the watershed protection overlay district. Implement zoning changes to protect undeveloped areas of watershed zone A and B lands, and then restrict development in zone C. And create a policy manual for non-municipal work in watershed areas to guide and inform government entities and private developers of performance standards and best management practices for the area. This comes direct request from the new water department head of the water department. Environmental engineer is really focused on updating the current overlay district and watershed management plan. And when I interviewed her, I kind of let her know that I would incorporate this into the open space plan because it's a really helpful thing for her to be able to point to something that's also in the Department of Conservation Services as she's applying for DEP grant money. Update the existing floodplain ordinance to identify areas of current and projected flood risk according to the FEMA geospatial database reports. I did not put a date on it because FEMA is going to be rolling out new maps probably next year. To prohibit new construction in high-risk areas and incentivize resilient design in medium-risk areas. That's kind of a high-level look at what we're hoping to do with the floodplain ordinance. And then update the existing wetlands ordinance to increase protections for wetlands, natural resource areas, and buffer zones, require on-site stormwater management for single-family homes, and implement a 25-foot no-build, no-disturb buffer zone for all resource areas and new development projects, and establish a minimum lot requirements for buffer zone area in new and redevelopment projects. So those, if somebody were to ask me all the things that the city of Gloucester can do to improve its municipal resiliency going forward, that's it. And I put it in this plan for you here because that was what the ask was. And I'm happy to take feedback or improvements on these statements, but I think I got a lot of it anyway.
Good job.
Go ahead, Richard.
I think this is great. Could we take some time to look at the multiples? And I think you would ask that we come up as a group with priorities to order them. Because like your wetlands one, that's J, I think is really important.
Yeah.
So what if we as a group were to just provide you with our 1 through 8 list or whatever it is, and you could get a sense of what people think.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. That's totally fine. I'll absolutely take it. I mean, I know it's 7 o'clock now. We've spent an hour and a half now walking through, but this I really think is the final document at this point. I'm going to add a piece on pocket parks in downtown areas, and then I will recirculate this around to everyone, and we'll call this the record that we'll work from. And then, Mark, do you have something?
Yeah, can you just review that section that we took out earlier? I just want to make sure we didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater there. Was that all about bike safety, or was that, I thought there was something in there about with respect, I mean, it's mostly about bike, but I mean, there was I guess the point about safe C to me was about pedestrian and not so much about bike, right? This was getting to the city's largest employer over to 200 apartments and Gloucester Crossing and all that, unless that was covered.
So how about if I put it in green linkages here?
It feels like it wants to be there, and it may have just been lumped in with the bike stuff.
Oops.
I certainly support that idea.
Sure. I have a formatting issue, as we can see. I'm not going to mess with it right now.
That's okay.
Hey, Adrian,
Okay,
I for goal 5, you started out by saying this is, I think you said this is part of the MA or the workbook template calls for a goal on this topic. Is that correct?
It will, so that the Division of Conservation Services is currently updating the workbook.
Yep,
It will not be done before we are done,
okay,
but it will include a demand for climate change and resiliency discussion.
okay.
So the current one we're operating inside of dates back to like 1995, Deval Patrick.
Uh-huh.
So, knowing that it's coming down the line is helpful for us because it makes our plan a little bit more evergreen. The new plan is the new structure of the plan is going to be a 10-year plan. So what we put out now is going to take us into probably 2032. So it's worthwhile to just plan ahead for it and know that it's there. And then in addition to that, when we first met as a group really, really early on, there was a very strong desire to incorporate climate change and resilience planning as part of the big discussion.
Yes,
So-
and I don't in any way object to that. I guess I need to read through this again. I just feel a little bit about, or I'm a little unsettled about what are the right vehicles for this message, and is our I'm just more from our old plan. I don't think addressed any of this stuff, and it was about the parks, the beaches, and that sort of stuff. And this relates to that, but I'm just wondering if the open space plan is the document that resiliency planners are going to look to and open up when they say, all right, what are we going to do this year? And so so don't get me wrong, I don't object to any of this content, or any of the things that are stated here. It's just a matter of where is the best place for it to be taken up by the city's department, and is this the best place? And is having this in the open space and recreation plan, does it in any way detract from the kind of the parks and recreation stuff that is at the core of the plan? So it's a
So
messaging question.
I can answer that question for you pretty easily. So the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program, for example, it's changed. It's evolved pretty significantly, even in the last couple of years that it's existed. It started out as kind of a smaller scoped thing that was really supposed to be about largely municipal infrastructure risk to climate change and sea level rise, and really encouraged the use and development of green or soft solutions to try to engineer, for a municipality to try to engineer their way out of the problem.
Yep.
And everybody's encouraged to, similar to the Green Communities program, everybody has to start by doing a plan and evaluation process, and then they're able to go for action items on their evaluation, whatever came out of their evaluation. So in the case of Gloucester, we actually don't have a lot of very high risk municipal infrastructure items. The ones we have are really big. Of course, we have the high school Newell Stadium property and the wastewater treatment plant. But by and large, most of the rest of the city's owned infrastructure is actually on higher ground.
Okay.
Compared to other municipalities where they're like actually underwater everywhere, So what MVP has EEA has kind of found is that people either have these enormous disaster projects or they don't. And so they've kind of evolved the MVP program significantly to incorporate a lot of different other things. And they've also shrunk back some other grant programs and rolled them into the MVP program so that it's now becoming this really big bucket for all of your ideas, right? But part of that is that if it's an open space project or it's a project that's happening on public lands, if you're applying for an action grant from the MVP, they say, is this in your open space plan?
Okay.
So you have to be thinking in advance of, okay, we need to be able to answer that question with a yes, as opposed to being like, well, it like kind of fits into this, objective, right? You know, like
Okay.
that's what we said there.
Okay, well, so to get at my question, is this the right place for it? I guess since there is this linkage to this grant source that is calling for it to be in the open space plan, the answer is yes, this is the right place. Okay, thank you.
And it doesn't own the whole thing, but it is important that it's in there. Go ahead,
Okay.
Mark.
I just have this is on goal 5, objective J. Require on-site stormwater management for single-family homes. Why just single-family homes?
Because anything larger than a single family home is already subject to DEP stormwater standards.
Including a by right 2-family?
Well, so we would call, in our case, we call that single family. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's lots of discussion to have on the wetlands ordinance. Those are the high points. Yeah, I mean, so for us, when an applicant comes to us with a project, for example, that they are going to turn into a 2-family, they're actually, because it's by right, they're able to file it as a single family, which is why they are able to do that. It's actually 4 units or more is what is subject to the DEP stormwater standards. But if you take it down to the single family home level, then we're capturing pretty much every project. And it's already something that the commission aims to do in hearing discussions. So this is really just be formalizing and affirming what is in place as commission policy at this time, is to ask them to try to mitigate any, currently the commission asks an applicant to mitigate any increase of impervious surface on a lot, either through soft solutions like rainwater gardens or through engineered solutions like, stormwater management structures. And oftentimes the applicants do that. They do that anyways because they're, whatever their site is, they really can't afford for it to erode away. But for the ordinance, I mean, the commission is always in a position where they do actually have to kind of relieve the applicant because it is not in the ordinance. And the applicant does not have to show a hardship to not do it. It's just an ask. And that does create problems in some cases.
Right. Thank you.
So, yeah, we'll get there. I agree. The wetlands ordinance is a high priority. Okay. I feel like I've beat you up enough tonight, and it's mostly just closing out the year.
So if I'm to understand, first of all, I'd say thank you for adding what you added and taking our feedback so well, and also respectfully, and everybody for offering feedback. Am I to understand our next step is to prioritize to give those high, low, and medium? And how do we do? I mean, is that what we're doing next?
Yeah, and I think that you should maybe do it individually so you have a little bit of time to digest the whole thing.
Great.
Opposed to all of us trying to do that now on the fly. I wanted to get this to you earlier, but here we are. We did get to do it tonight, so that's great. And so I'll add the couple lines about pocket parks and clean this up tonight, and I'll circulate it back around to everybody. We do have a meeting scheduled for the 26th of January, I think. Let me look.
Yep, that's what I see.
Yep. And so at a minimum, if everybody's got their comments back to me on timeline and who they would consider to be responsible entities and also potential funding sources. I will also be working on this, but I think that having many heads on the project would be really, really helpful because you may have ideas about funding sources that I never even thought of. So if you'll just go through each objective and rank it as like a high, medium, or low priority, and identify what departments or committees of the city that you think would be responsible for helping to execute each of those objectives, and potential funding resources. And then send them back to me and I'll collate all of that into the table that I'm working on. And we'll take a look at that on the 26th. How does that sound?
We
Would you
have a
send
list.
us yeah, would you send us an email with that list of asks so we make
Yes.
sure we cover them?
Yeah.
Thanks.
And a list of the agencies that we can pick from that.
I can try to make one.
The new and yet to be established Parks and Recreation Division.
Put everything there.
Oh my. The sustainability person.
Yes, which the new
Off you
mayor,
go.
the new
That's the
mayor
job
said he'll
description.
hire one.
What's that?
New mayor said he'll hire a sustainability director.
Yeah, well, I just wrote their job description. So
Yay.
off you go. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I don't think I'm going to take any more of your time tonight. I will just circulate some stuff around. What do you think, Heidi?
I think that's great. I'm gonna ask and just clarify if there's any other business or anything else that people need or want to say before we make a motion to end the meeting, I guess.
I would move we adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Yep, Dan Morris seconds, and I'm just going to say, all those in favor of adjourning the meeting? Aye. And all those opposed? Okay, it passes. Great, so,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you, everybody. And also, Richard, I just want to make sure that you are getting invitations and or access to the things that you need.
Yeah, I found that I have been granted access. So thank you to
Okay.
the Google Drive. Yay. So
you.
great. Thanks. Exciting. Happy New Year to everyone.
Okay.
A better
Yeah.
year.
Yeah,
Yes.
Let's hope so.
we'll see you next
Thank you,
year.
Adrian.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So, thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody. Okay,
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
bye.
Bye.